probable plagiarism from the facts at hand without even seeing his work. Zarlinga, of course, in fact, imitates practically all of my theses' original disproofs of the lie of pretended economy, except, of course, the vital underlying issues which I'd held to my chest too recently to distinguish myself from all the plagiarists. Thus I asked for Zarlinga's invalidation of mathematically perfected economy, or a proof of alternate solution. Of course, to pretend to resurrect a lost science, knowing the author of a long prior fact of singular solution was of like mind, he would have to have had disproven some aspect of my proof of singular solution to have produced a valid proposition, or otherwise he had to have plagiarized me. To no surprise, then, Zarlinga has never replied. Likewise, to my request, this person who had written me prove Zarlinga and Kucinich's deviate proposition is an actual solution, neither has this person who has written me replied. In fact, I have just visited the site of this person, which they had put up in the wake of their appeal to me, and it appears that this person is quite the schemer themselves. They claim to be a billionaire. Probably not so. They claimed to want to use my ideas to promote mathematically perfected economy. They don't even provide a tribute to mathematically perfected economy or my authorship on their pages. While they claim they would support mathematically perfected economy, instead they go into competition with us. And instead they promote a host of further plagiarists, such as this purported money as debt faction, which arose in the wake of Jakeran's plagiarism, and my story of mathematically perfected economy in a parable of perfect economy with an embedded fault, which these people have adopted as if it were solution. In fact, in this person's pretended endeavors, we're giving millions they pretended to be giving out millions in awards, and they even pretended, in a telephone discussion with me, to be awarding hundreds of $1,000s to a top award, supposedly named the Mike Montagne Award or something of economics. And they were providing this, they said, to students following in my footsteps. No evidence of this exists on their web pages. Quite conspicuously, this person who's promoting this so-called NEED Act, recently introduced by Dennis Kucinich in the House of Representatives. Well, to make a long story short, this person who has written my list, my own list, purporting that this solution that this is a solution that Dennis Kucinich has just posted to the House of Representatives. This person offers no proof of solution either. Nonetheless, they're promoting Kucinich and Zarlinga as heroic. Well, the story of Kucinich and Zarlinga hardly ends with Zarlinga's inability to answer for his pretended authority. Kucinich, likewise, has never responded to an email or call, even as I had sent a proposition of mathematically perfected economy to the 2008 Kucinich presidential campaign through campaign representative Mr. David Bright. Mr. Bright so clearly understood my proposition, even from a relatively brief, offhand telephone discussion, that he immediately asked that I send it to him personally. He would forward it to their Chicago people. Evidently, if you see Zarlinga's site, The Chicago people were Zarlinga himself. I thus never heard further, and so the authenticity of any further material produced by Kucinich and Zarlinga, of course, comes into great question even for the newly introduced to these facts. Because all the worse, Zarlinga exposes his inability to articulate or abide by the work he merely imitated. You can see how this person who wrote me likewise amateurly imitates my work if you visit their site. Excuse me. How does Zarlinga so blatantly expose his impotent imitation? He advocated then, as a purported solution, a purported Chicago plan, which he neither authored, which reduced interest rates to something like 4 or 5%. Of course, the models I provided the Reagan administration 25 years earlier accounted for failure under a necessarily eventual reduction of interest rates to 0 or near 0%, as we have seen. So who has even done the math but yours truly? And of course, Zarlinga's preposterous proposition, which itself disproved that he even understood the cause of inevitable failure I had identified so long ago, is itself disproven now, for years even, as interest rates have fallen below what he prescribed would save us. And, as my work proved over 40 years ago then, yet the inherent, inevitable failure so persists that, as I likewise projected so long ago, money has to be artificially poured into circulation at incredible rates, further compounding an already fatal sum of terminal debt, or we would be toast in a month or two. Not surprisingly even, coming and going members of Zarlinga's purported American Monetary Institute have long insisted I be included in his annual conferences. Zarlinga refuses to account for why he refuses to do so. But insiders report neither he nor Kucinich understand the issues, and of course, the reasonable deduction is that the plagiarist can hardly afford to confront the author of the work he imitates. If Zarlinga could disprove mathematically perfected economy is a singular solution nonetheless, he would have. Equally transparent and false is this person who's written me their support of mathematically perfected economy then. In fact, much like Zarlinga, this person goes into competition with our only solution, denying any credit at all to the original thinking we must unite upon if we are ever to have actual solution. So this person too is as phony gets. So I apologize to my list in that this person has mailed it owing to a mistake that I made. I did not blind carbon copy to my recipient list, and then this person who's pretended to support me all this time and who I never hear from because they're not, wrote to my own list advocating that Dennis Kucinich is a hero for introducing this bill which preserves interest. So, of course, if Kucinich, nonetheless, were a real hero, and likewise if Kucinich were really courageous, mathematically perfected economy could have been presented in the 2008 presidential campaign as omnipotent arguments for singular solution. Even now then, we lack such arguments, structure, or solution in the preposterous bill this person who wrote me so exalts. And so without much remark, I will include a few paragraphs of Zarlinga and Kucinich's further amateurish imitation, because even this little exposes the lie shared and promoted by this person who wrote me, and of course Zarlinga and Kucinich as well. A point which is identified as number 20 goes on in this bill thus: a debt-based monetary system where money comes into existence primarily through private bank lending can neither create nor sustain a stable economic environment. It doesn't say why. Can these people show why? And of course, that argument is indispensable to defending this bill. So if you've gone on to write it imitating something else, we can understand this structure. But if you were the author of solution, you would have provided your reasons. The reason being is those are the omnipotent arguments for your bill and solution to prevail. They're absent here. Instead, it just says, but has proven to be a source of chronic financial instability, not even describing the various forms in which this instability or injustice manifests, and frequent crisis, as opposed to an explanation of inevitable failure, as evidenced by the near collapse of the financial system in 2008. In other words, then, they don't even understand that this is a continual process of escalating failure, which will manifest in complete failure, likely very soon, because all the attempts to rescue it even simply pour further money into the circulation, which is assumed as further debt, and which sustains us only because we aren't even servicing that debt yet. If we were servicing this phenomenal additional sums of debt, of course, we would fail immediately. So this is entirely ignorant of the vital issues. He goes on and he says, point 21, banks pyramided their value. What's he been doing, reading Ellen Hodge and Brown? Who doesn't understand this either? Pyramided their value by spending money into existence. They didn't spend the money into existence. It's collateralized. It's assumed as debts. They're actually only publishing the promissory obligations of the people, laundering that into a falsified debt to themselves, and multiplying the debt into terminal debt by interest, as if a dollar, which might be spent to issue $100,000 into circulation, comprises a risk that justifies interest, with the interest preposterously applied to the $100,000 of principal, which is laundered thereafter into the possession of the purported banking system, and thus multiplying a falsified debt to the banks, which give up no lawful consideration whatsoever, into a terminal debt. So he goes on, he says, banks pyramided their value. Sure. Inflating the value of their asset bases, enticing unknowing investors to participate in financing schemes. So it goes on to say that these things, which are actually consequences, downstream behaviors, rather, that are incidental to the obfuscation of the currency, and the banks themselves, the peripheral banks, that is, attempting to survive and preserve bad assets and to make money even off bad assets, as we have tolerated as a customary behavior in this purported economy. So, he goes on and he says all these things that, he says ability to create money out of nothing ultimately became the taxpayer's liability. Well, they don't, not really creating money out of nothing. They're monetizing purported wealth, in which cases many times, the claim to wealth is preposterous, and all the consequences ensue, however, as a result of the obfuscation of the currency.